If they wanted to be with you, you would definitely know it. You wouldn't be refreshing your texts and analyzing every little inconsequential thing they say and trying to decode their weird and lengthy silences. You wouldn't be sitting in a loop of hope and panic, waiting for the next bit of contact from this person. And you definitely would not be holding on to crumbs and calling this a real connection. Because when someone genuinely wants to be with you, it doesn't feel like some sort of riddle that you have to solve every 3 days. Hi, I'm Madalena, and this is You Reclaimed. Around here, we talk about the hidden ways that complex trauma affects our emotions and our relationships to other people and our decisions. And we do this because we want to take control and live our lives on our own terms. Today, we're not diving into all of the complexities of why we get involved in limerent bonds, what they mean, what they awaken with us, or what we're secretly trying to get out of them. Those are all very valid concerns, but just not today. Today, we're going to focus on the bottom line because at the end of the day, it's that bottom line that we spend most of the time trying our best to ignore. Because that's what allows us to keep staying in a limerent bond in the first place. And let's be honest, we want to stay there because the short part that feels amazing, it feels amazing, at least for a while. The fantasy, top tier stuff. And when it's written well, it's really satisfying for a short stint. Stick around to the end because I'm going to break down exactly why these limerent connections feel so addictive and what they actually say about you. Hint, it's not what you think. You don't suck. Wait, did you subscribe yet? I have a lot more to share and I'd love to have you here for it. It really helps my channel grow and I appreciate it so much. Let's start with something hard, but really, really important. When someone says, I don't know what I want, or they keep pulling you closer and then pushing you away for whatever reason. They have a top secret job they just can't quit. They're working too many long hours and they don't have time for you. Their life is so terribly complicated and complex and they couldn't possibly have a committed relationship with you for this reason. Or they don't really buy into this crazy notion of monogamy that so many people seem to want. Whatever fancy reason they have. They're allowed to feel it. They're allowed to believe it. But here's the thing. If they say one thing and they act out another thing altogether, that's not romance. There's nothing romantic about that. Love looks like that in bad rom-coms. Everyone runs around for 2 hours trying to figure out if the crap happening on screen is love or not while we're all cringing in the audience. But in real life, that's just avoidance or inconsistency. And honestly, there's nothing attractive about it. And when you get hooked into this kind of dynamic, even though it's hurting you, it starts to feel like proof of some kind of deep and powerful chemistry at work. Like maybe the reason they're acting this way is because the connection is just that intense. But in truth, what it is a plain power imbalance. You've placed this person in a position of authority over your emotional state. And now they've become your validator and your decider, the one that gets to set the terms of engagement for the entire thing. And now you start to ask yourself whether this is something that you should accept, whether you should accept the complex truth they're offering about why they're not fit to relationship with you properly. Because when you give someone that much power, well, they get to decide. And you just sort of stay suspended in this weird limbo state, waiting for their decree. But here's the part that we have a hard time seeing when we're right in the middle of it. We don't just wait around because we're being strung along by a bad, evil person. We do it because we've idealized this person. We've projected something onto them, right? Maybe we see them as emotionally deep when really they're just emotionally inconsistent. Or we see them as mysterious and hard to read when really they're just your run-of-the-mill avoidant, unavailable, or just plain disinterested in us. A lot of what we do in Limerence is elevate the other person's qualities to a much higher status than what they actually are. And we assign deep and interesting meaning to them, meaning that other people frankly don't even see in them. To the rest of the people in their life, they're very likely just normal people. They're not a soul-shattering, soul-altering presence. They're not some cosmic force, which is the way we see them, right? But it's our own elevation of who they are that turns them into deep and powerful figures in our lives. And because we don't want to let go of that fantasy version of them, well, we stick around for whatever crap and pain comes with that. We explain away red flags that we wouldn't otherwise explain away, and that most people who meet them wouldn't explain away either. Because when you're not limerent, you're able to see people realistically for what they actually are. But when you're in the crystallization phase of limerence, when you've really locked into the obsessive part and you're constantly thinking about someone, it creates this false sense that they must be really important. Like, if I can't stop thinking about this person, there must be a really good reason. Obviously, they're my soulmate or they're my twin flame. Or if I feel this anxious when there's just a little bit of distance between us, it must mean something big is happening. But that's not really your intuition at play at that point. It's your nervous system dysregulating. It's dysregulation at its worst. You're reacting to someone who's activating wounds inside of you. Whether they're doing it purposely for their own means or not is kind of irrelevant, but you're the one trying to cling to the source of that pain as if it's a sort of cure. But just because your nervous system is reacting, it definitely doesn't mean that this person is right for you. So then why do we get stuck on this person and not the next person in line, right? Why not someone else altogether? Okay, I know I said I wouldn't get into the why of how we end up in these limerent bonds, but maybe just a little tiny thing real quick. Limerent objects are like old toys, let's say, okay? We come across them in our adult lives and we think, oh my God, it's my old bunny. It's that little stuffed bunny that I love so much, that made me feel so safe and good. But most of the time, it turns out that's not your bunny at all. One, it's just a run-of-the-mill dismissive avoidant, or a completely unavailable person, or a completely untrustworthy person that you couldn't possibly have a relationship with anyway. Or worse, a narcissist who just kind of likes your attention. It just feels like you found an old, valuable toy for a second. This is why we can safely say that limerence is rarely about the person. It's more about what they awaken in us. Because we tend to attach to people who activate old and familiar and powerful wounds inside of us, especially ones that we haven't figured out how to heal yet. Here are some of the obvious ones. Some of the unconscious reasons we might lock into a person who's not choosing us or who's in some other way very unavailable to us. They might mirror a parent or a caregiver who withheld their love from us or couldn't love us properly. So now we try to earn from this new person whatever we didn't get in the first place. Or they remind us of a little part of ourselves that we've disowned or that we've put aside for some reason. Maybe it's their confidence. Maybe it's their air of mystery or their easy sort of detachment. Things like this fascinate us because sometimes they represent something we feel like we're missing ourselves or something that we really want to have access to, and we just don't know how to let those parts of ourselves out. And that's really powerful stuff. It's so alluring to have access to these parts of us. They trigger our old abandonment panic sometimes. So we just cling to them harder, hoping that if we cling to them, it won't end in the same way it did when we were little, right? And then we can heal our wounds in that way. The point is that we don't choose these people in a conscious way, unfortunately. Sometimes our wounds just choose for us. The good news is that once we realize where our choices are coming from, we can definitely make different choices. And here we get to the part that actually matters the most. This is the part that can change the way you think about it in the first place. Ready? It actually does not matter at all how much you feel love, how much you love this person. Real love that turns into secure, affectionate bonding in the end, that turns into mature love, it has to be mutual. If it's not mutual, if it's inconsistent, if it doesn't grow in safety and in stability, then it can't grow into a real relationship. At least not the kind of relationship that you'd actually want to sign up for, right? Because what it could turn into, if you let it, if you push it or you force it, is a very unbalanced and very one-sided kind of relationship. And if that's what you're looking for, then, well, limerence offers you real opportunity. but that's not what we're going for in general, right? So what you're feeling, it could be called longing and then some. It's super powerful stuff. It could even be a projection of unmet needs, but that doesn't mean that it's the kind of love that you build a relationship on. And if this person isn't choosing you in a super clear and consistent fashion, then the story just has to end right there. At some point, ego gets in the way for most of us, right? We want so badly to be right about this person, to make them into the fantasy that we built up about them in our own minds, and to make them into someone who's worth the amount of pain that we suffer in limerence, right? And when that doesn't work and it becomes obvious, then we get really down on ourselves and we start believing that the reason it's not working is because we're not good enough. Like maybe there's something wrong with me because they don't want me. But the reality is that whatever the deal is with this person, it's not even our business. Because either way, we're not here to beg someone for the bare minimum, right? We're not here to try to squeeze little drops out of people like they're rocks devoid of love, right? Because then what happens? You're not really in love. You're just in a dopamine chase. And you're chasing someone's attention for the hit it gives you. And that has almost nothing to do with love. Either way, love is not something that you should have to chase in this way. So if you're still in that weird, confusing phase of limerence where you're trying to explain behavior that doesn't feel good, that doesn't seem to be going in the right direction, I want to say this directly to you. You are allowed to stop explaining the other person's behavior. You're allowed to stop replaying every moment between you and them, trying to work out what it means, hoping it'll make some kind of sense. And you can just stop calling it hope if what you're really feeling is heartbreak. Because sometimes the biggest relief comes when you just let yourself see the truth for what it is. That they're not confused, they're not undecided, they just don't want the same things you want. And while that hurts, it really does, it's awful. It also sets you free because now you get to go and find the thing that you want with someone who wants it with you. Next time you catch yourself fantasizing about what could be, try naming what actually is right in front of you. Just say it out loud. He doesn't call me back, or she keeps me at arm's length. This person is not showing up for me in a loving, consistent way. Truth has a way of cracking the spell of limerence just enough so that you can see it plainly for what it is. It doesn't necessarily make the pain go away, but it does put the power back in your hands. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Are you still finding yourself in the grips of a limerent episode? If so, I want to hear your story. Tell me what's helping you, what's not helping you. And let me know what kind of videos I can make on this topic that would actually support you in moving forward. And if you're into this kind of content in general, if it helps you feel a little bit less alone and more clear, consider subscribing so we can keep going together. See you in the next one.